All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Giovanni Valderas. I am the assistant professor of painting at Texas Women's University. And today we had a long day today, I think. So, yeah, especially with our group of artists who are joining us today. So let me go ahead and make some proper introductions. So I will go first with Lars Roeder. Lars lives in Alva, Oklahoma, where he is an assistant professor and program director for visual arts at Northwestern Oklahoma State University. He received his MFA in printmaking from Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi in 2017. He's originally from Madison, Wisconsin. It's awesome. Then we have Benjamin Muñoz. Benjamin is a Dallas-based artist whose primary focus is printmaking. His work is often reflective of his heritage, upbringing, and current surroundings. Muñoz stacks the imagery in his work to symbolize the idea of everything in life being dependent on what came before it. A largely self-taught artist, Muñoz has had several solo exhibitions throughout the United States, and his artwork is in several museums and private collections across the United States, such as the Arte Museum and the National Museum of Mexican Art. Muñoz currently serves as the board president of Print Austin and is the founder and director of Familia Print Shop in Dallas, Texas. His work has been published and discussed in several arts and culture publications, blogs, podcasts, and portfolios. Muñoz regularly gives artist talks at museums, galleries, and universities throughout the country. KillJoy, you want to raise your hand? Yeah, okay. KillJoy's work is grounded in honoring the earth and seeking environmental and social justice through both imaginative worlds and social movements. Her work is an interpretation of world mythology and a study of ancient symbols. She integrates storytelling with calls to spiritual and political awareness and action. KillJoy's family is originally from and partly based in the archipelago, excuse me, thank you for that, known as the Philippines, and partly in Texas. Her work sits at the intersection where jungle meets desert. And lastly, we have Omar Gonzales, a printmaker and adjunct professor at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. In 2020, he graduated with his Master of Fine Arts at the University of Texas at San Antonio. Previously, he obtained a Master's of Business Administration and Bachelor of Fine Arts at Texas A&M University, Kingsville in 2009 and 2014, respectively. His work is included in collections located at the National Museum of Mexican Art in Chicago, Arte Museum in Austin, and Zuckerman Museum of Art in Kennesaw, Georgia. Some of his work can also be located in Canada, France, Germany, China, Australia, and have exhibited across the United States. Gonzales is also a member of the Professional Artist Network with Speedball Art Products. Please welcome these talented artists. We clap. Yeah. Y'all have an extensive bio. I appreciate all that. So, today it was really great to see you all kind of collaborate amongst each other and kind of see this teamwork. And I was wondering, is that something that is particularly, well-known in the printmaking community? And how does one start that kind of community and start to build that? And I was wondering if any of you all would touch on that.
It is, yeah. That is, it is very common for printmakers to work together. I think just because printmaking in itself is very social. We share equipment and things like that. It's not like painting where you have like a canvas, your brushes, and your easel, and it's you. We have to like share equipment, ink slabs, brayers, everything. So I think it's more community-driven. I think probably the most community-driven medium. I think
definitely the most.
Yeah. No, I think that it's pretty normal from like the get-go. Like if you start in printmaking, you end up in a shop, which is already such a communal thing. You have to kind of work around everyone's schedule, and you learn how to work with people, and then you graduate or you move on, and you kind of always look for that community. I feel like you always kind of look for friends and opportunities and ways to work.
Maybe the difference with it all starts, I think there's always kind of an inherent community in a university, right? If you're learning printmaking in a school, And once you move out from that space, right, if you're moving on to develop a painting practice, it's a little bit maybe in more solidarity than printmaking, where, like Ben's saying, you go to another shop, or even times with ceramics, right, you kind of look for a collaborative studio. It's kind of the same idea, that where you can share equipment and share resources and inherently share ideas. And then when there's an opportunity for an event or a group activity or a group exhibition, right, then everybody kind of lends it, that translates to, and everybody kind of lends a hand to putting on all the extemporaneous things around making prints, I think.
Oh, nice. So it's interesting because I think as we start out as artists, I think it's quite a solitary kind of environment. And so would you say because of printmaking classes or the community, you kind of learn to kind of be more collaborative in your approach? Like, where does that come from? Or is it a natural kind of gravitation towards each other?
I found it inherently kind of the other way around, where I was inherently drawn to collaborative things. And then so I found that in kind of exploring the arts in school, that felt like the most kind of communal collaborative space. And I felt the most comfortable and kind of the most motivated to work in that space, I think.
I would say that's the same thing with me. I grew up like skateboarding, and the skate park has like a certain vibe. And I remember taking classes in like painting and sculpture and stuff like that. And then when I walked into the print shop, there was something about it that felt like a skate shop, or a skate park. Like you'd walk in and everybody was like, I don't know, skateboarding is really interesting, where it doesn't matter, like the coolest kid there is the guy who can like tray flip, right? It doesn't matter if he's rich or poor or black or white or gay or straight. Like if he can tray flip, he's the coolest person there. And printmaking had that vibe of like, they didn't care about anything except for like what you were doing, what you could make, and it was all, it had a similar vibe. So I think it was the exact same thing.
Can you tray flip, Ben?
Not anymore.
Oh.
But I bet if you gave me long enough.
You're saying as you peaked.
Yeah, I peaked. No, so I was going from department to department, and then you find printmaking, and it's like, oh, this feels right, so you kind of just stay there, I think.
Yeah, it has a good vibe, a good energy. Like when I first picked up on printmaking, like I just went in for drawing, and like usually drawing room and a painting room is kind of just empty for me. Like people are just in their own world and their own, their own piece. But then you go to the print shop, and it's like the artwork there, the equipment, like the energy. Everyone's there to like make
music. Yeah, people playing music.
Yeah, I mean like that's
being
like the
silly
place to be. And then
Your speaker earlier, like it's the music's going, there's a vibe, and we try to replicate the vibe everywhere we go.
Nice.
but you can like print on your own, but like it's nice to have people to help, like
Help you move drying racks. And
help you drawing,
Is that what makes it so inviting to be with a print publisher? And I was wondering if you can kind of speak about that. Like, what are some of the benefits to working with a print publisher? And also, what is it for some of us who may not know?
Yeah, a print publisher is a professional like shop, like Flatbed, Tandem, Tamarind, Crown Point. These might just be words I'm throwing out.
Yes.
They're shops with master printers who publish work for artists. It is similar to working in a regular shop at like a university or a community shop, but it's also extremely different in that they're master printers and you're kind of there to be like pushed in a direction that's uncomfortable. And the benefits, there's a lot of benefits to working with publishers. For one, your work gets exposed to like a whole nother audience. It's a fast way into museums, and and also you learn a lot, a whole lot, and then they're better than you are, in every way. A master printer. Anytime I've ever worked with a publisher, I walk in and I'm like, this is what I want to do, and they're always like, nah. They're like, we're gonna do this and with this, and I'm like, I don't know how to do that, and they're like, it's fine because we're better than you. Like we're gonna do that, and then then we start producing stuff that's I was at this luncheon thing the other day, and I was sitting with the Amon Carter Museum people, and they were talking. They were, oh, what kind of work do you do? I was like, I'm a printmaker, and they were like, oh, we just discovered that we have like an insane amount
of tamarind prints in our collection. We had no idea. And I was like, yeah, they sneak them in there, like, you know, and then you have like this embossed thing, and you're like, wow, I got a lot of tamarind prints. But it's because Tamarind, Flatbed, all those people, they produce things that, you know, they're pushing everybody to do stuff that they've never done. So you have all this cutting edge work coming out of Tamarind and Tandem, and then, you know, museums and everybody like wants it because it's like, wow, they just made the largest chiaroscuro woodcutter. They just made the craziest dry point anyone's ever seen. And that's stuff that we're not doing on our own because, you know, we like to just do not just what we're comfortable with, but that's a bad way of saying it, more like what we're good at, you know? So we just kind of play the hits. And then when we go to a publisher, they're like, we're going to do this. And it's, so I think there's a lot of benefits. It's hard for me to like pinpoint some, but yeah, there's a lot of working with publishers. Jonathan Orebo is he's a Sam Coronado's last master printer, and he's
Oh, wow.
he makes a lot of. I mean, he's, you know, there's this. I worked with him and Pepe Coronado to publish a print back in like 2020, and I'd never done screen printing ever, and you know, so through that shop, I published a lot of cool stuff, and it helps me. Yeah. I don't need, now I'm just rambling, saying the same thing over and over, but
But okay, so how does one? Is it invitational? Like, how do you get into something like that?
For the most part, the shops invite you in, and then
So yeah, I can't walk up in there and be like, let's do a print. No.
you could try. There are. It depends on the shop. Tandem has like a visiting artist publishing residency combination thing. That's the way they operate. Tamarind is similar. Flatbed, which is in Austin, and Black Rock Editions and Landfall, which are in Santa Fe, they publish like practicing studio artists. So what they do is they extend like a formal invitation, and then you accept it, and then they put you on the schedule, and there's like a whole like thing involved that way. And I don't know if there's like necessarily like a formula to getting an invitation. I think
Because it's a business, and they all kind of run slightly differently, so you
Yeah.
ask questions and see, you know. But I think most places, you know, there's some avenue to incorporate more people, because it's still about growth and adding people and getting people involved. And, you know, a big thing is that, with what Ben's saying with publishers, that there's a lot of non-print, people with no printmaking background will come in with an idea, or they come in with a painting, or you come in with a drawing and say, you know, we'll turn this into a print, and then they give you all the tools and show you how to do that, and then publish it for you, and then you share in the profits from those prints and the sales of those things. Yeah.
Master printers too are like a different breed of printmaker than like what we're doing. We're great printmakers. I think we're great printmakers. But master printers are like insane people. Like the way they understand print and like the method of it, and like I was talking to this master printer the other day. They spent like half an hour explaining the difference between tack and viscosity. And I was like, I don't care about this at all. But I mean, you know, they love it and they're like obsessed.
Wow, wow. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, so I guess my next question is for all of you, but most, I think most kind of directed at is with Joy. You do a lot of kind of wheat paste mural printmaking. And you know, for me, I like to think that it's a very immediate, accessible way to kind of communicate with the community. And I was wondering if you can kind of touch on that and the reasons why you do it, and also with the rest of you, if you all kind of experiment with kind of those wheat pastings out as well.
Thanks. I was waiting for a question I could weigh in on, because like publisher world is different from my world, and also I feel different from wheat paste world. So I come from like really DIY. Like for years I slept next to my press and would like use it to hoist myself off the mattress, off the floor. So publishing world is different from what I'm used to, but wheat paste world comes from like a very DIY space, and I naturally adapted to wheat paste murals, because what wheat paste murals are their posters that you make homemade glue for, and you basically go out into the street and paste the posters onto a wall that you like. And there was just so many things I liked about it. I mean, I like the lawlessness of it. I like not asking for permission. I like collaging, which is basically what a wheat paste mural is. So I have all of these different posters and elements, and just the way you can make a sheen collé on an edition fancy print, you could basically collage on the wall. And the nature of wheat paste murals, since you usually just roll up to a wall and do it, I don't have to check in with anyone. I'm just like, I want to do this, and I do it, and then I walk away. But talking about community wheat paste murals, that's something new I've gone into where, because I like to do these wheat paste collages, different institutions have been inviting me to make wheat paste murals, and so getting students involved or getting community involved, and you basically just have a bunch of posters, you have a vision for it, and you're kind of letting people know the direction you want this wheat paste mural to evolve in. And then what I particularly love about being on the street is that there's a lot of play that happens, and you play with your environment, and maybe there's a fire hydrant right there, and you want the fire hydrant to be activated with murals or images. So I find wheat paste murals to be a way to like get people to be playful and not think of art so much like in a white box.
Was it difficult, though, to kind of cross that line to, I would imagine there's a little bit of an anxiety to go put something out where you haven't asked for permission to do? And I was wondering, like, how did you approach that, or did it take some time to get over, or did you just go out and do it?
Well, I started my wheat paste practice in Mexico, which just has a different attitude towards public art, and they're a lot more accepting of it. Here it's a little bit different, but I have found that if there's something you want to do, to just do it.
I love that advice, everyone. Just go out and do it.
Students here, yes.
How about you, gentlemen?
I don't do a lot of wheat paste. I mean, that's Reinaldo in the show. That's how I met Reinaldo, though, is he does these like larger wheat paste murals, and I met mostly everyone except for y'all two, but Reinaldo, Pavel, Joy, I met everybody through Instagram. And I met Reinaldo because of his wheat paste mural stuff. He had this big woodcut, and I like DM'd him, and I was like, how on earth did you like print that? And how are you putting it on the wall? And then we just kicked it off like from there. And Pavel Joy did a mural with Pavel at Ronaldo's place, like full circle, like a couple months ago. So I've never personally done it, but I know that just the sense of that in the community has helped, like just even us, like get closer together and meet each other. So yeah.
Nice. Well, it's funny because Joy kind of mentioned like there's like these worlds that exist within printmaking, and I was wondering if you can touch on some of them. Like obviously, there's one way to navigate academia, and then the commercial, and then also like community aspect, and how different are these worlds, and can you jump in with these communities? Me?
I feel like we come from all different
Yeah,
worlds,
it's a
so
pretty good mix.
that's pretty good.
I think
You wanna
this
talk about
idea is you
academia?
can really like, the opportunities there to transcend, right? It's kind of dictated by the idea or the type of work you make or the type of message you want to spread, right? You can convey something different if you're making a public art and making maybe a social statement out of that versus if you're displaying work in a gallery, if you're publishing and selling work, right? And so it's kind of, I find those ideas dictated by the message. So when I'm expressing that to students, I try and show them all those different things because their default idea tends to kind of be based in a gallery or exhibition or something with their work. And so like thinking about kind of multiple streams of revenue, but streams of expression, right? And ways to kind of work out different ideas and really think about like how do you translate, the statement you want to make with the best way to convey that. And I think there's also, for me with printmaking, because it's got this kind of the aspect of the multiple and duplication and all that sort of thing, that's I think where it's all kind of interconnects, right? Because you kind of put an idea together from based on that idea of the multiple, right? You have an edition of prints, you make 10 prints, and then you sell them one at a time, or you paste them all up at once, right? That's a different conceptual idea, and it maybe dictates, again, the approach with how you're going to present or publish your work, your idea, your concept, and that sort of thing. And so I find myself kind of vacillating back and forth between this, where I have an idea that's going to be a single print, I'm going to do this, or I've got an idea that's based in collage, but I need 50 woodcut fish to collage all together into one big pile, right?
Lars
That kind of
Lars
thing.
makes some of the best art that I've seen that can't be sold. He and I don't mean
That's
like
why I'm
nobody
in
would buy it.
academia.
I just mean that like a lot of his work is like performative, like your whatever card, and really like some of the most genius things that I've ever seen was work that he made that happens in a moment and then it's over. And that could never exist, like in a that could like never exist in like a commercial gallery. And I've always thought that was fascinating, like how there's different. It's like there's like an art world for everybody, like no matter what you want to do. I met this girl in Santa Fe the other day at Echo Gallery, and she came in and was telling me that she does like these crazy like dance, like Native American, like performative dance things with like these costumes she makes. And she was like, yeah, and like I do that. And I was like, do you like sell tickets like to them? And she was like, no, like I just do them. And I was like, in my head, I was like, there's no way this is sustainable. Like there's no way, how's she gonna make a living? And then she was like, I've been at it for like 10 years. And I was like, really, how? And she's just like, I get like grants and like, different people fund it, and there's different like all kinds of, and that's a whole section of like the community art world that I didn't know about, like this nonprofit like community art world that like funds projects like that, things, ideas and stuff. And she bounces from like residency program to like travels the world, does these really elaborate productions, and I mean, it's just supported by the art world to do this stuff that is really so far removed from like academia and blue chip galleries. And it was this space that I didn't even know existed until recently. I mean, it's really wild to see how the art world is so different, and how there's so many more avenues now besides just teaching or, signing a contract with a gallery.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Well, I feel like
Well, you do a lot of that, like with the piñatas, and your work's amazing. Like,
well, it's not like, this is about you all. Let's not get on to me. With that being said, do anyone in the audience have any questions for, I hate to monopolize the time. Maybe? You have time to think about it, Christine. Yeah.
I want to hear something Omar has to say.
Give it to Christine.
Ben has a question.
Oh, we have
Oh,
someone
there
in
we
the
go.
back.
Oh, someone in the back.
We'll get Christine to ask her. Hello, good evening.
Hello.
So I kind of gathered from everybody's stories about how they came into this world that a lot of it is passed down knowledge. Yes, you can learn some in academia, but a lot of like, oh, how does that work? Show me. Yeah, let me show you, hands-on, from mentor to mentee. So how does that affect your careers? How does that affect your daily life? How does that feed into your psyche?
Yeah, like I definitely picked up on printmaking when I was a student, and like I didn't know what it was. Like it was a foreign like term to me. Some people get exposed to it like in high school, and I'm like, really? Like I wish I knew about that. But my mentor was my printmaking professor, and he's still my mentor, and now I happen to work beside him. Like now I'm teaching the printmaking department, so I kind of full circle went back, and I'm kind of trying to mentor my students and get them inspired the way he inspired me, and I'm like just trying to. I know sometimes I see myself in my students, and I'm like, I'm hoping to pass down something valuable to them.
Feels like a loop, like
Right. And there's so many things, right? There's a million things to learn. You'll never learn them all. So I think you kind of one way to kind of proceed through that expanse is to just kind of like move from place to place and idea to idea. I think education and learning in school is kind of the foundation, and you kind of learn all these baseline things, and you start to develop, by the end, you're developing your own personal practice, kind of how you want to work, right? And then, especially with the internet, it's really easy. You maybe see someone online who's working kind of like you are, and maybe is a few steps ahead of them. And if you're motivated, right, you reach out to them, and then you realize they're not scary or mean, and they're nice and want to share their information, right? And then you can build that connection, and they even will kind of move you on to the next person that may give you a little bit of guidance. I think that's maybe the most meaningful and substantial way to like build a network of people, just kind of slowly, one at a time. And that's really how I didn't make any actual art in undergrad. I just kind of watched other people do it and barely did the projects, I think. But as soon as it was over, then I kind of felt like, well, I've got all this knowledge, and I'm ready to just kind of. I met some people who were doing it, had been a little bit more established, and it kind of showed me like how they developed their practice, right? And it was just something I didn't totally grasp as a concept while you're in school, because there's so many things, right? You're learning a lot of skills, and you're learning a lot of problem-solving abilities, and you're learning all these things, but to really kind of, I think it takes taking yourself out of like a bi-weekly project or semester-long structure of processing ideas and information, and then you're like, whoosh, you're done, and then in a month you start in the next semester, right? And that can be that's kind of rigid, and it maybe or may not fit like how you actually learn and develop and work through a single problem, right? You could spend 5 years on a single piece. That doesn't necessarily fit that, but I think through that kind of, like we're saying, kind of moving from mentor to mentee to build that network, right? That gives you a little bit more freedom to kind of understand what's working for you. And you get good feedback and inspiration, motivation, and then those people you make friends help share and promote you, right?
Yeah. I think even like in a peer way too, like even if you don't have like a mentor-mentee thing, just there's a lot of Chicano, like Latin printmakers whose work has like a vibe, and you can't really figure it out, and then slowly you start to connect the dots of like, oh, you know this person, that person. I know this guy Braulio, who's like a monster woodcut artist here in Oak Cliff, and he's never taken a print class ever, like ever. He works demolition, and he took like linoleum floor, and he just started carving the floor from like linoleum, the pieces that they demoed, and he's an amazing printmaker now. He's been doing it for like years, and there's stuff that I recognize in his work that I can't quite put my finger on. And then one day I was at his house, and I was walking through, and he had one of Joy's pieces. I've never told you this. He had one of Joy's pieces, and he just bought it from you on Instagram. And I was like, oh my, that's my friend's. And he was like, oh, you know Joy? And I was like, yeah. And it's that, he loves your work, he buys your work, he looks at it, and then, we borrow textures and the weight of line and stuff like that. And especially Joy, she inspires so many people. People like constantly look at her work. So, things like that, even like that, and that's not a mentor-mentee thing. She's never met him. It's just like this weird exchange of regular community and printmaking. I think that everybody clicks. I've never gone to a printmaker and been like, hey, I'm a printmaker, and they'd be like, don't talk to me. They're always like, cool, what kind of printmaking? And I think that is important.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. I wonder, after saying all that, it seems like you all have a good group going on. And how hard is that to find that camaraderie? And in some ways, do y'all hold each other accountable? Like, as far as making work, right? Like when you see someone else's work, that drives you to make something better.
Well, I got, piece of advice that kind of relates to like this is the best way to like have shows is to get a group of people to put together group shows, right? And then instead of having one show, like each person finds one, then you're all in 5 shows, right? And so if Ben keeps forcing us to have shows, then we keep having to make work. I think that's part of it, right?
But we've never fought with each other. We've done stuff together before, and we all work well together, I think.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, but that's a funny question because, like, when you called me up and you're like, "Hey, do you have any blocks for the steamroller?" and I was like, "Not as big as yours," you know? But it, like I see people around me doing really ambitious things, and I like that play and I like that energy, and I'm like, "Oh man, they're doing all this cool stuff. I want to do like big cool stuff too."
Yeah.
Yeah, Ben's work definitely inspired me when he did like the
that's
6,
nice.
Big blocks.
Oh, yeah, we
And
can
I
talk
was
about
like,
that.
Oh, I gotta go big from now on. Just set the bar
That's
or
funny.
meet it. And like already, I want to make bigger work now. Just
I love that.
Not big anymore because that's ridiculous.
I love that. I was really hoping that you all would have a really good, juicy story about maybe how you kicked another printmaker out of your group, but
I've
yes.
removed people.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll have to talk about
That's
it.
because he switched to painting. He doesn't make prints anymore.
One of us that
Yeah.
just doesn't make prints anymore, so it didn't work out. So we were like, "Oh, can't have you come over here. We like steamroll things, and you're like painting the canvas as we pull it off." So,
But no.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Oh, wow. Okay.
Hi. All right. So, I know some of y'all are professors and some of y'all may not be. So this is like, I'm going to ask it from the standpoint of a professor, but I also want to kind of open it up to just like the general community. But I think with the bubble of thinking of art going in the gallery, there's also this kind of bubble of like the artist as working solitarily or like in a certain way as students are learning and going through their education. So my question is like, how do you interrupt students' like idea of like kind of that bubble?
like interrupt the bubble for them thinking that their work has to be in a gallery, or
Or just like interrupt their thinking of like this, it has to be like, good for the professor, good for grades, or good for like, that it has to stay within the institution, or they're not like maybe good enough to reach outside of what they think they should be doing.
Right. I mean, that's kind of the arc, right? It's that you learn all these skills, and then something sticks, and then you're kind of find your focus and find your path, right? So I think, it starts for me, I always find it like started when they're freshmen, just speaking from like a 4-year academic standpoint, right? You start when they're freshmen and really like push community in foundations, in drawing one, because they continue to see each other over and over and over again, right? And I feel like it starts to kind of build over time as they develop their skills, and even if they move off, and one person's a print student, one person's in ceramics, and one person's a painter, the fact that they have that sort of cohort mentality, right, it brings them back together, and they have a little bit more, maybe a dialogue of that broader concept of making art and being an artist. And then I think, as much as you can, we try and get them out of just the classroom and take them to other events, right? Or encourage them to go to art fairs and public events, or show them visiting artists, and kind of expose them to, again, it's in like final quarter of their degree, but expose them to how they can kind of create multiple streams of revenue or ways to put information out there, or create kind of personal growth.
yeah, when they come as a freshman, they all have like their basic knowledge of wanting to just be an artist. So they're inspired to be an artist, but like Lars said, like them taking different mediums, they'll be guided towards one thing or another. And I'm not trying to push them to like have a show at the end. I know that's the end goal, but for me, it's just them just learning from each other. I think being in that environment with other students, because they can make art outside. Like I always tell them, you can make art, you don't have to be here,
Right.
but you're here to like be in a community and kind of do critiques and just kind of hold each other accountable for the work.
And
And then
even-
going out to events, like that definitely inspires them even more, because if you're in a town where there's not a big art scene, then you're kind of just only looking at your own art in the institution. You're not looking out at like being inspired by other people. So like the printmaking events, that's definitely what inspired me. To kind of go back to like one of the earlier questions is, like my mentor only taught me so much, and I kept asking him so many questions, and he was like, I already taught you everything, like, you know, I had nothing else to teach you. But going to other events and then having some knowledge of like some vocabulary, I can ask people questions like, what tools did you use, what kind of material? And then the print community is super inviting and warm and welcome. So they're like, oh yeah, use this, use this. And I'm like, oh my God, I can make better work now. I can try different things. I can keep growing. But
I think even having like graphic designers in the mix, right, where they're on a track that's a little bit more maybe client-based or something, and the projects that they work through and the problems that they have to solve when when they come into studio arts or vice versa, and there's this kind of cross-disciplinary kind of interactions, then I've found at least art students pick up a little bit more of that, maybe business acumen or those kind of ideas with, like, you know, doing work for people or designing things for people or doing that and thinking of themselves in a little bit more of that, operating in that capacity. And then graphic design students who maybe are more a little focused on digital skills, right, develop some technical skills in physical media, right? And then they can use that and make prints or do paintings and incorporate that back into their design. It kind of feeds both things. But then in the big picture, and even once they're graduated and they're off doing their thing, but they're online and see how each other is kind of working and making it in the world, that can kind of inform, I think, those different paths and make them a little bit more kind of enriched, I think, yeah.
Nice.
As someone not in academia world nor commercial world, I find myself really inspired in DIY spaces always, and I just always bring up the DIY energy because that's where I learned how to be an artist. Like, I don't make art to make money, and I don't make art in an academic setting, and definitely like the reason why I make art is for social movements, but I really emphasize play. And that's why like wheat paste is such a big part of my practice, because you don't take it so seriously. I feel really confined by a white box. And I actually actively don't seek out to show in galleries or museums because it doesn't engage the playful, creative side of my mind. And I like not asking for permission, and I like just doing it. And I don't find that space in a white box.
And I'm not in
Such a great-
academia, and I tell people not to pursue art. So, no. Don't do it.
It's such a great answer. I think we had another hand, or two hands, okay.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, I mean, there's kind of a couple of sides to this, but I wanted to ask about how you see printmaking right now in relation to digital media. And that would be in part talking about, like, do you think that there's a growing interest because people want to, like, have hands-on again when they've had too much digital, or is there decline? Is it not affecting it at all? You know, like maybe there's something else you could think of where it has something to do with a relationship between printmaking and digital. I'd be interested to hear that too. But I especially want to know, like, do you think people have a different approach to whether they want to do printmaking now because they've been simmering in all this like digital imagery, or you know, and they want something that's palpable and material.
I don't know if people don't want to. I don't think even, you know, we're talking like people have always really not known what printmaking was. I don't know if that was ever affected by, like, you know. If anything, I would say that it hasn't taken away. I would say that they've paired more. I mean, you see like an uptick in like risographs and litho, like photolitho plates, just being included and bonded into the process of printmaking and traditional methods. So no, I would say that if anything, it's just like they're, instead of one taking over the other, it's like they're kind of merging. At least this is my opinion. I feel like they're kind of merging together. I've seen a lot of people using these weird like printing golden plates, and then you etch the ink that you printed onto it, and then you can wipe the plates that way. I mean, just really weird stuff that but even that's funny because you could just print out the paper, but they're printing it on a plate that they can then etch, that they can then wipe, that they could then, pronto. Like, why would you do that? Like, just print out the paper. So I think that, it's this weird, you thought that they were going to like collide and then one was going to win and the other was going to die, and they just formed this really weird beast of a monster that you're kind of like, okay, and it created all these new mediums, and I don't think that one consumed the other or like fought or anything like that. I think that I don't know. That's just me.
Depends on
I
the
feel
space.
Like, yeah.
I think in like maybe a more accessible art space, art fairs, people kind of making things and selling them on Instagram, Etsy, right? There's like a huge explosion of people kind of getting in or investigating relief printing and learning letterpress and doing kind of the more accessible things, screen printing, and especially finding, antique or historical pieces and kind of reusing them as a starting point or a point of departure. And I think when people see that and explain it, right, they're interested because it's a part of history and it's different than kind of our everyday thing, right? That's kind of the general perception of print media and kind of printmaking art because it's got this sort of like, especially when it's got something that's maybe photomechanical, right, or you're working with wood type or something that's got this like history to it. People engage with that, and maybe it's engage, or I think people find interest in that the process, right? That's the whole idea, is that you can like have you walk someone through that, and it's different than working digitally or experiencing like printed media or even digital media on your phone or that sort of thing. And I think that's maybe where the engagement starts with the general population.
And digital styles, it plays a role. Like, I know a lot of screen printers that do digital for their designs. Like, I use digital to like create my designs, but the aesthetic is different when I do a woodcut. Like, I start with my collage and then I transfer it, and then there's something I can't get digitally that I can get with a gouge.
I think people thought photography was the end of all painting. You see like A View from Lagros, and people saw that and they were like, that's it, it's over. Like, no more art. And then, there's still art.
There's still art.
So, yeah, there's here and there.
Yeah, and I think in school, like students, there's a way to incorporate those two things, right? Any sort of technology that's incorporated, we encounter the things that are maybe using it in a less than exciting way, right? But if you give enough people a laser engraver, a 3D printer long enough, somebody comes up with some weird and wacky stuff to make with it. And it's a lot of times incorporate it with the materials that are kind of traditional or historic or whatever, that sort of thing. I mean, I have a 3D printer, but I used to make tools for printmaking, right? Rather than just 3D printing things, figurines or whatever, and that's a kind of fun exercise for me because it gets me thinking about the process and thinking about kind of, I have this tool that I use, but how could I make it more functional for me, or how could I make it better? Or this tool is very expensive, how can I make it really cheap with this 3D printer, right? So I think that's something I'm trying to build more into my curriculum too, in teaching students to problem solve using these tools, not just to like make an image that they've found online using mechanical means or digital means, right?
I've started designing digitally posters that have a really fast turnaround time, and I like it. I like digital because it's sparkly and it's clean and it's just like ready to go. But something that I really miss from printmaking, working in the digital realm, like all of us, we carve blocks. Like when I work on a digital image, like I can get the line perfect and I like just get it exactly perfect how I want it. But when I carve, like you only get the one shot, like you carve it and then that's it, and there's no redos, and there's something like really primal, and also it holds a lot of energy, like in the line that you want, and you have to get the line right. There's no do-overs, and I like the energy that that line holds, but I also like how clean, sparkly, and fast the digital realm is.
Nice, thank you. One more question.
Okay, so I was just wondering if you could talk about the substrates you're printing on, because a lot of it's paper, but not all of it is, and then you're talking about other things that you're doing that aren't in the gallery, and so I just wanted to hear about that.
You printed on
I'm
boxes.
making etchings, and mine are printed on like a cotton rag BFK or something like that, but just kind of traditional. Mine are more traditional in there, but then they're also the color elements, at least on those cows, have chincolet, which is this type of kind of collaging paper in between paper and the print, and those are like cut origami paper pieces, just so I get a really strong color on a thin piece of paper. But it's kind of purely technical. That's me. Mine are simple.
Mm-hmm. I don't get very far away from paper. I print on canvas sometimes, but I haven't done that in a long time, just because I didn't like the pressure. You know, you get really used to printing on the paper that you like, and then when you switch it up to canvas, you're like, this is right. It feels right. It feels good. And you peel it up, and you're like, it's too light. And you're like, what happened? So I don't mess with that too much. Everything is paper. I'll print on like a wide variety of papers, and I'll really mess with the paper. Like I'll hand dye it, and like get coffee grounds or like different like bugs, and I'll like do stuff like that to the paper. But I don't like print on anything that I think is strange or not normal. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the weirdest thing I've ever printed on. I can't think of anything like really weird that I've printed on. I made clothes once, but that was like it was a weird thing that I did with somebody, and it didn't really work. But yeah, I tried to make clothes.
I told all those high school students they should take down their mom's curtains and print on them and then hang them back up.
That works.
But it really is like anything fabric, paper, whatever, anything soft. You see people print on T-shirts a lot.
The Rocklon Super Suede that we used for the previous steamroller events we did is it feels more like a curtain.
Yeah, it looks like a tarp.
Yeah, it feels like a tarp material.
Like cotton, right?
You can print on pretty much anything, really. You print on this chair. This
Also, like logistics, like I like sending those big prints in a small box, and like shipping it over here. That's nice.
I think the benefit of a matrix that you have a repeated image, you can get really experimental. I also don't really print much other than on paper or cloth, but there's an artist in Houston, and she prints on so many. She prints on dried leaves, on like the cotton, on the plant.
Like that.
And I think she has the freedom to do that because she has a matrix that she can just experiment with. But yeah, most printmakers have a love affair with paper.
Yeah. There's that one guy in Austin, I don't know if y'all know his name, he makes kites. He makes really big kites. We did a thing with him for Print Austin one year where he taught everyone how to make kites. I don't know if any of y'all know who I'm talking about. I don't know his name. You know who I'm talking about?
Koichi
He makes-
Yamamoto? No.
Who is it?
Koichi Yamamoto, but he's not in Austin.
No, I think it must be somebody else. Maybe he learned it from him. I don't know. Maybe it's more common than I think. But it's they were making these really elaborate, like giant kites that were printed like material, like the textures really, whether it be like feathers or like scales, and then they would build the animal out of the paper, and it would become like a dragon, and the scales were printed, and they could fly it through the sky. It's really beautiful.
That was fantastic.
And they handled everything. But anyways, that's that. I've seen that. That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
I wouldn't do that. But what am I going to do with a kite? What am I going to do with a 10-foot dragon?
You can give it to your kids. I was just saying.
They can climb inside
My
it.
kids are flying this
Yeah.
dragon around the neighborhood.
So, we're coming up towards the end of our discussion, which I thank you all for participating. I have one last question, and this kind of is geared more towards your personal life. So given how much, like how hectic your schedule is between showing, actually making the work in the studio and traveling, how do you make time for personal life with family? Could you give us any pro tips?
My wife is a certified saint. Like, she is the best human being I've ever met in my life. And I think it's just like, I don't even know. I wouldn't even say I'm like good at it, but I don't know. I'm thinking like, there's some days, this is going to sound really stupid, but this is like a decision that I made not too long ago that I feel is like kind of important. I had this show in Richmond and a publication in Richmond. So I was gone for like a week and a half, right? And the day I was supposed to come back was The Armory, which is this really amazing show in New York. And through a gallery, I got VIP passes to everything. I was in free everything at The Armory, like all of these great events. There was like parties that I was invited to. And I had to decide, I'm already gone for like a week and a half. Am I going to take another week to go to The Armory? That means it'll be like 2 weeks and a half before I haven't seen my kids. I have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 7-month-old baby. So they're not really old enough for me to explain to them why I'm not there. They just know that I'm not there. And my wife is the kind of person that's pretty understanding. She's a really good person that I could have been like, look, this will be good for my career. I need to go. But I don't want to be like absent in their lives. So even though all of that stuff was free, and even though it was absolutely amazing, and even though like I had major FOMO the entire time, and I was like, God, I should be there, I was like, it's really more important that I be at home with my kids. And that won't be the last show at The Armory, and that won't be, eventually. I really only have this certain time with my kids while they're this young. And that's the decision that I have to make. Because I know so many like really great artists that have gone through like 3 marriages and don't talk to their kids and stuff like that. And I'm not trying to judge their lives or anything, but I just, I want to do everything that I can to be there with my kids. So I was like, no. And what's funny is my flight got rerouted and I landed in LaGuardia. And I was like, God, I'm here anyways. And for a second, I was like, I should just stay. And I was like, no, I can't do that. So I don't know, I came home and I just tried to be intentional with not being gone for too long. And just talk to my wife about it constantly, like always checking in, like constantly, are you still okay with this? Like, how do you feel? Are you fine? Like, I got to go to Atlanta. I was gone for a lot of this month, and then next month I got to go again. And, a lot of us have to enjoy a lot too. Joy travels a whole lot. And, you kind of, it's this thing because on one hand, I have to go because I need the shows because I need the money. And then on the other hand, like, I don't want to go, because I like to stay. But right now I'm working, I have this giant, like the biggest show I've ever had in my life coming up in May. And I did like the math in my head of how much work I need to produce for this show. And I have to make, this timeline is never going to work, but I have to make a piece every week until March in order to be ready for that show. So, I would just live in my studio. I would never see my family. And so I'm trying to figure out, what do? I want to see my kids, but at the same time, I have to be in the studio because I got to make this work because I got to pay these bills. So like there's guinea pigs in my house that need food in addition to like diapers.
The kids aren't guinea pigs. The kids are kids. And
no, I know.
Also
Yeah, but they have the guinea pigs. Yeah, there's temporary guinea pigs. But it's that's a lot of stuff. Like and then you have this added pressure of like, okay, well, like if I'm like an artist, and artists, some of them are very wealthy, but some are not, and you have this thing where you're like, I have 3 kids and a wife. So if I want like a comfortable American life, I'm going to need 5 cars one day. And I'm going to need a 4-bedroom house. And I'm going to need, all this. And you start to like...
2040.
You start to freak out. And you're just like, I don't know. You balance stuff. And then a lot of it is I would say 90% of it is my wife. Hooking up with a partner that understands what you're doing and wants to support you. And you support them. I just did something crazy that I didn't think I would ever do. But, it was like my wife wanted to do something. And I was like, you know what, for sure. And I did like a major sacrifice for her. And I think that it's a lot of that, a lot of back and forth of like, I don't know if there's that was a really long way to say your question of like, how do you balance it?
It was just a therapy session.
I don't think there's a balance. I think there's like, you take turns tipping the scale. And then, I don't know.
I found like, I was pretty unproductive in the pandemic for all the time. I don't know if anyone else was like that. I'm not like a very rigidly structured person. It's like work on this, work on that. But I'm like, I realized kind of in the pandemic we had like months and months of nothing to do. And I didn't do much. And I just kind of thought as we're kind of moving out of it and there's more things to do, I found like it came down to like being deliberate with blocking out time and then kind of also blocking out that specific time for like doing other things and relaxing or connecting with people, but on like a specific time instead of just sitting on YouTube for an hour, right? Like dedicate or talking about on the phone. But that's like, we always end up somewhere good with a brilliant idea after talking on the phone for an hour. But I think like it just came down to being deliberate with how you organize your time, and because I just moved to a new school, and do you want me to unload my baggage on? But I moved to a new school, and then we had this show, and I'm like getting situated and trying to make work, but I still like found ways to like visit people, or I drove to Norman for an opening from northwestern Oklahoma, and like being able to say, I can take this day, right, of this weekend, and everything will still be there when I get back. And I
that's
think
hard.
Just thinking forward in that, but also then like not overdoing it, right? I could have also just stayed there for 3 days and partied or something, but like I think as you develop, that's part of developing a practice too, though, right? Is like understanding the amount of work, the pace at which you work, the other things you have to do, right? You may be a very efficient, effective maker of art, but maybe you're a slow writer, right? And so you have to dedicate different amounts of time to those sort of things, or like as you kind of make more and more stuff, you understand like all the little extra things that I found as a student I would get real, like framing stuff would always get, I was like, oh, this show's coming up, I gotta make this stuff, and I finish the print the night before, and I'm like, wait a minute, I have to put this in a frame. And then so it's like scattered, but now I've got that sort of thing built into my practice, right? I think it becomes part of that. And just kind of 3-hour blocks are what works for me. That's how I do it.
I also really enjoy this though, so I never really.
That's right.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, and there is a lot of travel, and there's a lot of like being away, but I'm never not having fun. I'm stressed out sometimes, but it's still fun. And like that's hard too, because then sometimes I feel really guilty because my wife will call and like we're trying to check in, and I hear the kids screaming, and she's like really stressed, and she's like, "How's it going?" And I have to like pretend like I'm not having fun, and I'm like, "It's awful, like it's bad. I don't like it here. It sucks. I wish I was with you," which is true. But
Wait until I meet your wife. I got some stories for you.
it's a lot of that. But I know that it's
sometimes I'm just chilling and I'm thinking about stuff that, like we're doing this, we're technically working, but I'm thinking about Gnome's Cones. I saw a place down the street
called Gnome's Cones. And like right now, like I'm like,
that's all we're thinking about.
It sounds good. I've never been there, but I saw the sign and I was like, I want to go to Gnome's Cones.
Yeah.
Maybe after this, I'm going to go to Gnome's Cones.
I was gonna just add also, like, I mean, a shout out to my partner Rebel, and you shout him out before I did. But having a supportive partner is having a supportive partner really helps. But I will say, like what you were just saying, like really enjoying stuff. Like I'm definitely an excitable person. I say yes to everything and overlapping. Like after this, I'm gonna work on a poster, and I wake up and I think of emails, and it's just like constant stuff. So, but like I'm the worst person to ask how to balance life because I say yes to everything. I don't balance anything. I just say yes to everything. But being the kind of person that says yes to everything, I also know when I have times that I can dedicate to non-art things, like being in my garden or having a nice meal or watching some stupid show. Like I really give myself to the experience because I know that it's temporal. And I'm gonna pass into like yes frenzy again. So like whenever I get those small chances to like be still, I like 100% give myself to that.
Nice, nice. Thank you. Omar?
Yeah, I've been teaching for a couple of years now, and it was, straight out of grad school, so I had like shell shock from MFA days. But for like the first year, I wasn't really making work, and it felt bad. I felt like I was missing something, like seeing all my like friends making work and being productive. I was like, I'm just teaching like my students, but I was like, man, I need something for myself, And I met someone like that year during the pandemic, and now we're gonna get married next year. So
Classic.
I've kind of
Congrats.
put like putting like my practice, like trying to be on social media all the time, and like that used to be my thing, was just like focusing on like getting my imagery out there. But man, I've never been happier, like just being with a partner.
Nice, nice. Well, it seems like the big takeaway is, I guess, two things, like finding the right partner, and then if you want to be an artist, maybe no guinea pigs. It seems like that's a big stressor in your life.
Added stress.
Yeah.
No pets. Nobody
Yeah,
needs
no
pets.
Yeah, you really, who's going to watch them when you go out?
Yeah.
Out of town.
Yes, yeah, that's
Yes.
true.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out. They have a show up, Siete in the East Gallery, so please go check that out. But I can't thank you all enough for coming out and doing the steamroller today, especially in the sun. And it wiped me out. I don't know how you all are functioning, but
I'm sunburned.
yeah. Well, can we get a big round of applause for our guest
y'all.
artists? Thank you, everyone.